good afternoon and welcome everyone. I'm Simon Grandage of the Business Lincolnshire events team. I'd like to welcome you to today's webinar on Boston's Pride of Place, Mayflower 2020, Vision and Design for Aspirational Learning, Business and Enterprise, the longest title in the world. Brought to you jointly by Team Lincolnshire, Business Lincolnshire, Boston Borough Council and Boston College. This is the fifth in a series of webinars delivered by Team Lincolnshire to provide support for businesses during these challenging times. Business Lincolnshire also have a host of webinars that you can access through their website. Team Lincolnshire brings the public and private sectors together to promote Greater Lincolnshire as a place to live, work and invest. Now in its third year, it's one of the fastest growing ambassador programmes in the UK, with over 100 members from a diverse range of sectors. Team Lincolnshire is a powerful and influential group with a key focus on championing the region. They want to improve the environment for businesses to grow, to attract new investment and to drive forward the economy of Greater Lincolnshire. If you're interested in joining or would like to find out more information, please visit the Team Lincolnshire website or look out for us on Twitter at Team Links or LinkedIn, where we are pushing forward with our Team Lincolnshire Cares campaign to show just how much Team Lincolnshire is supporting one another and the wider community during COVID-19 and beyond. The Business Lincolnshire Growth Hub wants to help as many businesses across Greater Lincolnshire as possible during these uncertain times too. We're continuing to share the latest updates and advice as we receive it to make sure every business is aware of the potential funding, learning opportunities and tailored support that is on offer. We're also keen to share local business innovations or successes, so if you have an inspiring story to tell, please do get in touch. For the latest news and guidance for business on this continuously evolving situation, please visit our website at businesslincolnshire.com. Or you can speak to an advisor and we'll share email details with you after today's event. Today's webinar highlights how the Town Deal platform has brought together key partners to create a concept of multifunctional learning, business and leisure. The Mayflower, an iconic, exciting and forward-thinking building, will provide a space to link communities, business and enterprise with learning and leisure in a way that towns rarely achieve. Now it's my pleasure to introduce the first speaker for today's webinar, Michelle Sachs. Michelle is the Deputy Chief Executive for Place for both Boston Borough Council and East Lindsey District Council, with responsibility for place shaping an area of 822 square miles, working with strategic partners to deliver a diverse range of solutions to create an attractive and prosperous place for our communities and businesses and visitor economy. Over to you, Michelle.
That's lovely. Thank you, Simon. And good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the webinar. We are really excited to be with you this afternoon, and for those of you who may be watching later. I think just to set that context for what are the town deals, you can see that it's both Boston and East Lindsey, although today we're going to be focusing on the Boston offer. And what that means actually for our patch of Lincolnshire is that we actually have the opportunity of 75 million to be leveraged into our area, in addition to any of the match funding that we're able to attract to that. The impact on our, as I say, on our patch of Lincolnshire is absolutely significant. In terms of the language of town deals, it's used to describe levelling up and is used to support places that have previously been underinvested through focus on city regions, which has happened over the last few decades, well, last decade particularly, where there's been much emphasis on what can cities bring to the economy. And actually there's been several reports in the last few years around the impact of the town economy and what that's done to UK PLC in terms of underdeveloping, particularly around skills. So one of the things I'd like to focus on, first of all, is just to set the scene for Boston. So Marta, may I have the next slide, please? Thank you, Marta. What this does is set out what assets Boston has in terms of its town deal. Now, the town deal boundary is very precise. It isn't the actual borough of Boston. It is a much smaller geographical area. And it was something that we agreed with HMCLG right at the beginning of the process. And what we did a quick asset test of what do we have within the town area. And you can see a variety of different things. Many people say Boston has no shops, and it was quite reassuring to see actually we did have shops, but of course that was pre-COVID. And we're all aware of the impact on the local economy, particularly retail, that the COVID pandemic has generated. But we are also really fortunate that we have several key assets. And amongst those are the port, the railway station, and of course, our college. Boston College is a top 5 UK college, and something which we find our own community doesn't realise how significant this is, without the wider Lincolnshire understanding either, despite serving such a broad area of locality. One of the other interesting points for Boston is the number of listed buildings, and you can see there 279. We have one of the highest densities of listed buildings in a square mile than anywhere else in the country. And when you start to see some of our images for the town investment plan, you can see that actually we have several photos that if you looked and said, where is that? You might actually think you were looking at a photograph of York, but it is in fact Boston, because we have so much heritage and amazing architecture and structure, but it goes unnoticed. And part of our town deal is very much focused on pride of place, which includes real emphasis on raising the profile of our listed buildings. And we range from the Stump, which everyone knows about, I think, to Shodfriars, to the Guildhall, and to another variety of shop fronts that we have in our town, in order to, which go back through generations. And we often say that Boston as a place has had a port for over 1,000 years. And if you come and look at the architecture of Boston, you can tell that when the port has been on the upper, that has seen great wealth come into the town, and there has been the equivalent buildings then constructed. Then as it's ebbed and Boston's fortunes have declined, you can see there is a sort of a gap then in the architecture and the history of the town. And we're really fortunate. We have the Stump, then we have our Tudor, then we have our Georgian, and then we have our Victorian. And they all really go to setting the place for Boston, and the emphasis in terms of the port and what that has in terms of the fortunes of Boston. So Marta, may I have the next slide, please? So when we first were given the opportunity to bid for the town deal funds, of which the deadline we're submitting for is this Friday, so many of us are looking a little bit frazzled and hectic, I can assure you. But what we wanted to actually do was create a real platform of collaborative working. And we didn't want it just to be within the town, because we feel it's really important that we can bring in those skills and expertise from partners that go beyond just Boston. Really, again, not just to raise the profile, but to put people together who may not usually have been in a room pre-COVID, now on a Zoom call, who then could discuss ideas, innovation, and come up with solutions through dialogue, as opposed to working in isolation. And we use this as a real opportunity to sort of say, right, forget what's happened before. What do we need? How do we unlock the potential for Boston? Because actually we all agree Boston has huge potential, but we also have some real challenges, and particularly around our skills. As a couple of examples, Boston's average weekly wage is £130 less than the UK average. That's a huge figure that is not going into the average household in Boston, that can impact on access to health, leisure, skills, education and learning, all of which then feed into whether an individual is happy, healthy and economically active. The other aspect was around really looking at the regeneration side. I talked earlier on about the levelling up and the language that's used for town deals to level up, to be able to bring towns to the level that the cities have been operating for a number of years. And bear with me one moment. Sorry, I just got a message there on the chat. There was a little bit of background, so I've just managed that. In terms of the regeneration, again, we have lots of economically active opportunities, but some of that has not seen the inward investment, and that can come from lack of market investment and market lead. So some of the projects have also been around how do we create that interest in the market, and that's why some of our projects will also need public sector intervention. So as an example, one public estate, some of you have already been to sessions on the PE21 regeneration project that's part of our town deal to show how we can regenerate the town centre to increase footfall and bring people into the town for a different reason other than retail, which then is able to support the existing retail we have by increasing footfall, but also to provide other purpose. Marta, may I have the next slide, please? One of the key things around what goes into Boston Town's town investment plan is what do our community need, what has their feedback been, and how can we capture those ideas and thoughts into a really innovative and creative but deliverable town investment plan. And as one example, the My Town portal, which was something set up by government at the start to encourage engagement, Boston is top out of all of the 101 towns for the level of ideas and suggestions that have been put through the My Town portal. We were able to take some of those ideas and start to collate those with bigger suggestions that were coming through and use our board to capture the ideas and innovation in terms of the projects. And one key theme which kept coming through was the importance of skills, linking to job creation, linking to future inward investment, and also to protect and support current business. And again, as one example, much of our workforce within Boston is based in what is considered to be low-skilled agricultural and food manufacturing. Those who operate within those areas don't believe them to be low-skilled, because actually there is a skill to that kind of production line and manufacturing, which is underestimated. But in terms of those industries, they are facing quite rapid change in terms of automation, robotics and AI. And that has actually been increasing through the COVID pandemic as firms have looked to see how they can expedite those types of technologies in order to make efficiencies whilst there's been such an issue with getting people into the workplace. It's been really important that knowing that that's the way the industry is going in the next 5 to 10 years, that we make sure our existing workforce have the opportunity to access good quality, high quality skills and learning that not only then enable our existing workforce to transition as those technologies improve, but create the absolute skills base for which our current businesses need to thrive and grow. And I often have many of our businesses say to me, Michelle, we just cannot get the workforce. We cannot attract the calibre of workforce that we need, particularly on the higher skilled types of jobs. And engineering is another one that springs to mind. And that's something that through the college, and as Claire will explain next, is where there's been real focus. And we've seen the EMAT Centre come through and launched in March this year, officially by the Minister. We have the Digital Transport and Logistics Academy, should be opening just after January. And then we have a new project, which is the Fresh Produce and Logistics Centre as part of the town deal. And that then leads me nicely into Claire in terms of the Mayflower. So Marta, that's me done, and I'm happy to hand over to Claire now. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Michelle. Just to introduce Claire. So Claire's the principal and CEO of Boston College and has devoted a 25-year career to working in further and higher education. Although she started her current role in the midst of the pandemic, Claire has worked quickly to build strong, purposeful relationships with Boston and its businesses to secure mutually beneficial opportunities that can arise out of effective collaboration. So over to you, Claire.
Thank you very much, Simon. If we can go to the next slide, that would be great. So welcome, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for your time today. It is hopefully an opportunity to share the vision that we have to listen to your feedback and obviously to gain, hopefully, your active support. I've been in Boston for the sum total of around 6 months now, and during quite a difficult time, as already been described. But it seems to me that the town of Boston is a bit like an intriguing painting that appears on a show like Antiques Roadshow or even Repair Shop. And if you've never seen the latter, it's a show that recognises the hidden treasure that someone brings in, and after years of neglect and disinterest, people bring that to life. The ancient work of art that I think is Boston is a hidden gem, and behind its layers is a town rich with history and heritage, and its bright colours are just simply masked at the moment. I believe the town investment plan that Michelle has described for you gives us a chance not only to bring to the fore the potential of Boston, the current Boston, but also to build a new kind of Boston, a new piece of art that sits comfortably alongside the modern art as you might see in a gallery. Next slide, please. The town investment plan and the project that sits within it is an opportunity for us to rethink the town of Boston, as Michelle has described. If we do nothing, the transport infrastructure will continue to stifle growth. It's a bit like chicken and the egg. If we don't have something worth coming to or coming from, then why invest? The availability of labour and other impacts of Brexit are for us to face. And as Michelle has outlined, the skills levels of our people really do need to be addressed. We need digital connectivity and investment in that, because without that, we are not going to be able to survive the changes to the jobs market that we are already experiencing. We might see the threat of relocation, some of the people with those skills, and they, again, will then bring the risk of even higher levels of deprivation through job loss. The impact of COVID, the shock may continue for a long time yet, and I think if anyone has heard the news today, when we're looking at unemployment rates of between 4 and 7%, that's really quite shocking, and we do have to do something. And without a strong town investment plan, we might fail to secure this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for capital investment in our town. Could I have the next slide, please? Fortuitously this morning, we've seen the publishing of a new document. The Independent Commission of Colleges for the Future published their report today. Led by Sir Ian Diamond, it describes the real impact that colleges can have as the centre of their community, building foundations of fairness and sustainability, working with businesses and innovators to develop the skills needs that are needed in order for us to experience the economic growth and productivity that we deserve. If anybody would like a link to that, we'll include that at the end. Next slide, please. I do think it's exciting that the college and its partners are able to reshape at this stage something that's only just been put on the table. So, as I mentioned, Colleges of the Future is 2030. If we can harness this opportunity, then we could have a College of the Future in the next few years. So when I joined the college, my predecessor, Joe Marr, had done some great work in securing the opportunities for putting a project forward that is likely to be in the region of where the Jeff Mulder Centre is now. But the key purpose is to elevate skills and enterprise, both visually and economically, with a new and I think rather beautiful community and business face. It was an opportunity, I guess, post-COVID, to rethink the projects, because we do have to think differently. And it's been the opportunity to work with key influencers that has meant the Mayflower could be born. Excuse me 1 minute. Apologies, I've no idea where that came from. So it's been great to work with some fantastic people who have looked at the Mayflower and seen it as an absolute potential. So new slide, please. We all know the story of the Mayflower, a ship that took people with new ideas and wanting to do things differently to America, and that's where Boston, Massachusetts was born. So Coming to Boston, for me, it was a bit like learning a brand new story, and how the amazing buildings and the infrastructure of Boston contributed to that journey so many years ago, 400 actually of this year. So we had a rethink, and I have to say that I was able to work with the most amazing architects to put together a concept that has been absolutely embraced by the people who've seen it, and today is my opportunity to share that with you. So I'm going to move to the next slide, and my colleague Shari from YMD Boone will also talk to you in a little while about where the influences came from. But the Mayflower effectively reimagines the FE College. It's an inside-outside space, a radical, what's known as biophilic design, which brings the outside in, allowing us to connect with each other, with businesses, enterprise and innovation, with new thinking. And that's very much the thread of what the College of the Future has recommended, that we don't just see colleges as connected to business and enterprise, but we're actually embedded within it. So the build I'm going to show you, the concept drawings, are audacious, they're different and they're daring, but that open and welcoming nature-filled space hopefully will help people who've never even thought about coming into college to retrain for a new job, for a different job, or even a better job. It will remove the barriers to education that we so often see. And if you think about those people that have been mostly faced with the issues of the pandemic, not just young people, but people who've been in jobs for a very long time, the world is changing and they need very often to upskill, particularly in digital literacy. And the space that we will provide through the Mayflower will do exactly that. So I'd like to move to the next slide just to show you some of the early ideas and inspirations. What we can see here though is where the Mayflower will sit, and also how it connects to the other projects within the town investment plan. So if those of you who know Boston will be able to see this quite clearly, but you can see that the Mayflower will actually sit within less than a mile of the town centre. Next slide, please. What you can see here at the bottom right is the orange areas, which are the current campus of Rochford. And as Michelle mentioned earlier, we already have two beautiful buildings, one completed and one to complete just before Christmas, the Digital Transport and Logistics Academy, which we're working on with the University of Lincoln. What you can see there is the red area, which is the current Jeff Mulder site. And having spent some time looking at this particular position where it fits into the town, we can see that it does face the community far better than where we currently are. Our entrance to the college is nestled in the middle of the campus, but we want to open up the face of the college to the community to welcome people in. Next slide, please. If you know it already, this is the Jeff Mulder Leisure Pool, so I don't really need to describe much more than that. It's an elderly building now, but part of the town investment plan is also to look at urban regeneration. And so we've worked hard with our colleagues in Boston Borough Council to look at a way in which we can keep best of both. So if we move to the next slide. And these were the early inspirations. I was really keen for it to be obviously as carbon neutral as possible, for there to be a sense of the inside the outside within the inside. And one of the early inspirations, if you know it, is the Sheffield Millennium Gardens, which is the most beautiful building to walk through. You instantly feel calm, you feel comforted, and you can enjoy the nature that sits around you. So I don't know if Shari, you would like to make a comment about some of those early inspirations when we talked about the proposition Mayflower and how that building might work. Marta, would you be able to allow Shari in, please? I'll keep talking while Shari
Can you hear me? Hello.
Here we go. Hi, Shari.
Hello, I couldn't unmute, I'm sorry. Hi, everyone. Thank you, Claire. I just want to take this opportunity to say that it's been amazing working with Claire and her team. And you're just inspirational, Claire, and you knew exactly what you wanted from day one. So the brief was very clear. The new building had to be iconic and had to be aspirational. and having the community at its heart. So that was the brief, really. So as you saw from the previous slides, obviously there was a missing piece. If you have a look at the bird's eye view, there was a missing piece connecting the two sites, which was the Jeff Mulder site. And by obviously adding that to the college, you just complete the college campus, really. And the idea was that to kind of rotate the front entrance to the site, so it's actually facing the town centre, and that improved the circulation and access, and opening it up to the community. And internally, we're going to have exciting spaces where it's all nice and welcoming and inviting, and it's going to have a cafe and a restaurant, and also it's going to have some of the curriculum that college is offering open up for the community to use as well. So it's going to be a really kind of jointed approach, in terms of the finished product. So we're very excited, obviously, about it. I'm sure Claire has some external and internal views of the project, so she's going to share with you. Thank you, Claire.
Thank you, Shari. I did give the architects quite a few headaches along the way, so I just wanted to take this opportunity to thank Shari and her team for your involvement as well. It's been a journey. So the next slide, please. What you'll see here is an aerial view of the proposed site and the new building to go on it. So those of you who know Boston, you can see to the left is the Mort Foster drain. And we really wanted to take the opportunity to maximise the impact of being right next to the water. Not every town has something like that, and so it's really important that we incorporated that into the building. You can see that the roof is curved, again, with that really organic feel and that feel of openness and light. The car park that wraps around it will allow you, along the left-hand side, for people to have access to the building, public to have access to the building. So if you take the next slide, you start to see it a little bit more close up. So Mayflower, again, is an opportunity for people to step over the threshold of a college where they may not always be used to doing so. So removing those barriers to entrance. So next slide. And this is the side view. Again, we can see there the light flooding through the building. But it's when you get inside, I think, is where you start to see how exciting a space and how different this is for a college-based business and enterprise centre. Next slide. So this is the open space for public access. Along the right-hand side will be the cafe area and also a formal restaurant as well, to allow our students to practice what I can absolutely say are fantastic catering skills. I've had the opportunity since I've been here to gain several pounds since I've been in the college because of the fantastic food that they serve. So you can see that overarching the space of these beautiful curves that are so redolent of the internal aspects of a ship, which I really wanted to capture to keep that essence of the Mayflower going. And if we look at the next slide, and this will turn to the left, you can see here the entrance to the college, again filled with greenery, filled with trees and open spaces. And far in the distance you can see there a glass space, and the next slide will show you what that looks onto. So one of the key things that has happened in the last few weeks and months is that it's been really important to consider how we maintain the leisure facilities for the town, and that's really important. And when I first suggested this to Shari, I did have to say that I was fearful that she might leave me at that point, but in a very quick time, they actually saw the opportunities that would be given by including a pool within the design. So you can see here that we've retained a leisure pool, and if any of you've been to Centre Parks, it does have that sense of kind of a leisure area where you could quite happily bring your children at the weekend or even spend some time yourself. So that essentially is the space. What you can't see from these slides is access to some of the facilities. So on the next slide, we can start to see what is in there. So as I mentioned, digital learning is really critical with both formal and informal spaces. The business and enterprise zone is really key, and I think for business leaders in the call today, the opportunity to have a centralised space where you can meet partners and develop ideas and work with the opportunities that our students will give, I think it is really critical. There'll be conference and meeting facilities. We do have some in Boston, but to have something so central and the connectivity to the rest of the campus, I think is really different and innovative. We do intend for there to be volunteer services and access to them, retail units, and also an opportunity for our hair and beauty students to be able to demonstrate and support their learning. I mentioned the hospitality offer, and we'll also have startup units. There's about 9 in the current scheme that will allow new businesses, such as those started by James Mitchell, who you'll hear about later, to begin their journey to success. And as I've already mentioned, the pool, and I think that also is really critical in terms of the overarching scheme in the way that it links to the health corridor that is critical to the part to address some of the issues that Boston has with its health. So essentially a front face of the college with reception, with access, parking, and a managed gateway to the rest of the campus. Next slide, please. We've got some timelines there, and we hope on Friday to submit the town investment plan, which will outline the 25-year plan for Boston, which will also include how a project like this fits in with the general schemes and also investment into the Port of Boston. But we've got 12 months to work up the scheme from there, and that's why we need your interest and your ideas. So we'll be coming to you to look at how you might want to use the Mayflower. Next slide. We've got some challenges. We know that the town is an area that wants to change, needs to change, but we do have some barriers to get through. But it's that longer term vision, I think, that we all need to empower people with. There is obviously lots of changes in the local arena, but also nationally. And your support is going to be so important if we're going to achieve this vision for the future of Boston. Next slide. So what does it mean for you? Well, what we're presenting here, I think, is an iconic and purposeful building for the town, a reason to come. With access to enterprise and employability support, it's a reason for people to stay here. With access to business support and facilities, including superfast connectivity, it's a means for you to thrive and a means through your workforce to flourish. But that access to each other, both real and virtual, is a reason for everyone to prosper. Next slide. Thank you for listening. These are not promises. This is a concept. This is early doors, but it needs you and it needs you to help. So we're going to be talking to you a little bit later about how you can. The next person speaking will talk to you a little bit about our build approach and how that fits with a carbon zero necessity for our country. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Claire. That's fantastic. I think that's really inspired everyone. So we've heard from public sector and we've heard from education. And I think the key word from both those two presentations has been collaboration. So we're now going to hear from businesses, the third party to that collaboration. And the first of our business speakers is George Wallace. George is Commercial Director at Boston Seeds and has taken an increasingly prominent role in the development of the business. He's successfully built on the business's strong foundations as both a traditional wholesaler and industry-leading e-commerce retailer to deliver impressive and consistent growth, even through the challenges presented during 2020. So over to you now, George.
Thank you very much. Everyone hear me all right? Yeah, okay. I think we've got the Metza slides up, but perfect. Firstly, thanks for involving me in this. It's something I'm really excited about, and hopefully for the next 3 of us speakers, we'll try and bring it together as to how this might address some of the issues for businesses in the town. So, just a little bit about Boston Seeds to begin with. We're still a relatively young company that was born out of agriculture, so very much in Boston and Lincolnshire's roots. But we've innovated a long way from the beginnings around 15 years ago to now be the largest online retailer in the UK in our product group, so those being grass and wildflower seeds. But I think a little bit like Boston as a whole, we're relatively invisible to outsiders. So it's important for us as well as the town to make sure that people are really understanding what's going on behind the scenes. So we're up to the point now where we're employing 12 people locally, and we're turning over close to £10 million. So we're a sizable business, yet invisible to most people who would even live in the town, because we don't have prominent location, and we're not perhaps in the most exciting of markets to outsiders, albeit we are innovating in the platforms that we sell these products. So I've just been asked to basically give some insight into how this project might help plug some of the gaps that we see as businesses. So as we grow as a business, we have a demand for high caliber individuals to fill increasingly complex roles as our business grows, but also right through to entry level. So right across the spectrum, either technically skilled, entry level, or management potential. And it's a perennial problem that we have as the business grows to try and get hold of the right caliber of person at all levels. So for us, we're currently recruiting for web developers, so a very technical skill, marketing, another very specific skill, but also people that have just got soft skills, which I don't think we're great at developing as a town. So those who have a little bit of commercial acumen, can build personal relationships with people, and they're very much self-starters, so you can come in and manage projects, for example. So part of what I think the problem is for Boston is that some of our best talent is immediately drawn away from the town. And because we don't have these beacons of aspiration like lots of big cities and other towns. So for example, I went to university in Nottingham. So first of all, I left Boston for my education, which isn't always obviously necessary. But as you go into Nottingham city centre, you have a huge Capital One building on one side of the road, the BBC studios on the other side of the road, and you immediately see inspiration for perhaps your future career, but also for how far you probably want to take yourself. And I think in Boston, that's something that we severely lack. The new Boston College building that has been built on Skirbeck Road, for example, right in the face of people going past it, I think is a great beacon for aspiration in Boston, as is the sports bike shop, for example. So James will speak later, but that everyone knows the story behind that in Boston. James is a minor celebrity, so that those kind of things really do drive people to want to achieve in Boston, but I just don't think we have enough of them. And this is, for me, another one of those projects that will be very, very visible to the public, and through the generations. And yeah, it will really show what you can perhaps achieve in Boston that you hadn't really thought of. And the other thing that I'm hoping it will do better than we probably currently do are these kind of things where we're bringing the public sector and private sectors together. So the disconnect at the moment between the education in Boston and the needs of the business community is something that I think we really need to address. And that's why I'm always delighted to get involved in these kind of events and try to engage with other local businesses that see that opportunity in Boston, want to try and do something about that skills gap really that we've all highlighted today. And that's very brief, but that's my ramblings on the subject. But obviously pleased to take questions at the appropriate point at the end. So thanks.
Thank you very much, George. That's great. Thank you. And good to hear, a Boston speaker reflecting on your experiences and of moving away and then coming back. So our next speaker is Kate Folling. Kate's the Director of Human Resources for Metzer Group UK, Boston-based timber manufacturing business employing over 300 people locally. She's a fellow of the Chartered Institute of Personnel and Development with over 20 years experience in manufacturing and distribution and wanting a piece of that timber for the new building. So over to you now, Kate.
Hello everyone, and thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. Just a bit of a brief background on me, I guess. I feel like I'm a relative newbie to the Boston area. I was given the opportunity to join Metzer back in July 2018 as Group HR Director. And up until COVID, I have been attempting to navigate rush hour around John Adams Way on a daily basis. I've worked in HR for over 20 years, predominantly in manufacturing, working with a range of products from small electrical items to premium snacks and even fighter jets. So quite a diverse portfolio. And I think, interestingly, one of the things that I suppose I find a challenge and something that George made reference to is around branding and image. And I guess many of you may not have heard of Metzer Group. Next slide, Marta, please. I certainly hadn't heard of Metzer when I joined them, and I guess for most of us it's because we decide to put a lovely shade of paint over some of the wood that we find in our house that would ordinarily have a Metzer logo on it. I'm sure that some people will more readily recognise the legacy name, which is Finn Forest, because generally when I say to people I work at Metzer, and they go, Metzer, and then you say Finn Forest and they go, oh, you mean down Fishtop Road? Our parent company is a cooperative of around 103,000 Finnish forest owners, and 2 years in I still have to say that a bit slowly. We operate in over 30 countries globally, and our business operations cover the entire value chain for wood. So everything from domestic and commercial tissues to greaseproof paper, paperboard, pulp and wood products. We're also one of the leading producers and users of renewable energy in Finland, which, as most of you will know, is one of the key ways to fight climate change. Next slide, please, Marta. Metzer would employ around 450 people in the UK, and we are the current owner of the manufacturing and distribution site, which has been on the old golf course at Fishtop Road. I can't actually get anyone to give me a number, but as far as I've got so far, I think it's at least 40 years. I'm guessing it might be a little bit longer. Our interest and involvement in the Mayflower project is twofold, I guess. One from a build perspective, and two from a corporate values perspective, specifically our commitment to creating well-being. Next slide, please, Marta. So from a build perspective, the principle of urban regeneration to us as a business is significant, and I genuinely feel really privileged to have the opportunity to work for an organisation that has sustainability at the forefront of its agenda, and I'm pretty sure Greta will be on board with that one as well. We are very proud, and we hope that all of our employees are proud of what we do. We like to think we don't just manufacture wood products, but we are pants on the outside superheroes doing our part to save the planet. Next slide, please, Marta. So given the nature of our business, I can tell you that our engineering design team got more than a little excited when they find out about this project. They've been working closely with the architects to share their knowledge and experience on the art of the possible when it comes to the use of timber in construction of such an innovative concept. And I just at this point will thank Karen for the comment earlier, I'll pay you later. But the picture, as you'll see, some of you might recognise it. Claire's already referenced Centre Parks, but that's one of the buildings at one of the Centre Parks sites. So that's the kind of product, that's the kind of build, sorry, that we would use our products for. Next slide, please, Marta. So that was from a build perspective. From a I guess in terms of values and our commitment to well-being, as with much of UK manufacturing, Metzer is facing a looming skills gap. We do have an ageing workforce, older members of our workforce retiring, and there are insufficient properly trained young people emerging from the education system. And this brings a similar challenge from a recruitment perspective that George has already talked about. But in In addition, to the future technical skills gap, one of our key challenges is to develop current workforce capability. We need to ensure they have the emotional intelligence required to be productive, engaged and motivated. We want to enable our employees to strive to be the best versions of themselves, both inside the work environment and perhaps equally, if not more importantly, at home and in the community. We recognise the change that we're looking for isn't going to happen overnight, and whilst we are keen to invest in our current workforce, it also makes sense that we consider our future workforce. So we need to ensure we bring people in that already have the attributes that we believe will help us to be successful. The majority of our workforce live within a reasonable commute of Boston, and while significant investment in the local area is underway, we recognise it is an area of social deprivation. Its geographical isolation means there are many generations of its residents that may have experienced a disconnect, likely to have impacted on their well-being and in turn their interpersonal skills. Last slide, please, Marta. So with this in mind, it would seem logical that investing time and resource into supporting the mental wealth of our local community will help to improve the well-being and mindsets of both our current and our future workforce. So I guess I would end on saying, from a METSA perspective, the question is, how do we move from making a difference to our employees to helping the wider community to flourish as well? During my time at METSA, I've had the opportunity to work with a number of incredible, inspiring and supportive stakeholders in the Boston area, some of whom are on this call with us today. And one thing that we all have in common is that we share the same passion and aspiration for unlocking the potential that we believe that Boston has. What we need to do is take positive action to expand this group and unleash the power of the ripple effect. We truly believe the Mayflower project could be a catalyst for a transformational ripple effect amongst the Boston community, helping to generate a tidal wave of much needed positivity. Again, as George said, if you've got any questions, happy to answer them at the end, but I guess that from our perspective is why we're invested and committed in terms of the Mayflower project.
Thank you very much, Kate, that's brilliant. And be thinking about your questions and get them sent in, because we'd like to have those. We've got one final speaker, and our next presenter wins the award for best background of the day. It's James Mitchell. James is the founder of Sports Bike Shop, one of Boston's most successful and fastest growing businesses. In just 17 years, the business has grown from a back bedroom startup to a multi-million-pound market leader in motorcycle accessories. Rather than a final series of slides, we're going to do things a little bit differently now. So, James, hello.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
You're more than welcome. So, would you like to tell us a little bit about your business and your connection to Boston, please?
Yeah. So I started a sports bike shop back in 2004, 2005. I often get asked by people who are involved in the business now, why did I start a business in Boston when they come to visit us? And I say, well, I live here. I didn't choose Boston to start my business. I live here, therefore I started my business here. And I'll do it again every time. I'm very passionate about the town, very excited about this project and keen to get behind it. I think echoing what George said, you have an issue where there's a lot of businesses that are sort of invisible. And I think something like this we can use to sort of draw those out and let people see what amazing things there are in the town.
Brilliant. So why do you think that Boston's a town worth invested in, James?
I strongly believe Boston has all the right ingredients for growth. I think the only thing lacking is the investment. I think, I would say that previously the main issues for the town were the transport links. I think it's still absolutely the case, but I think it's probably less of an issue going forward, thanks to the part technology plays. So, of course, with the pandemic that we've got going on at the minute, I think that's proven that a lot can be achieved without physical meetings. And I think that potentially, that change in behaviour helps level the playing field for places like Boston. And the location becomes far less important. And I think that's important from both an employer's perspective and an employee's, in that, you know, you could train and gain your skills in Boston. You don't have to work in Boston. You could live here and work anywhere now. And likewise, we could employ you know, skilled people from all over the country. So whilst we don't want to encourage people to you know, to either move their businesses or leave the town for employment, now I think it means we don't have to, because we can employ more people without moving the business, and likewise people could be employed, you know, further afield. So I think that enables towns like you know, Boston to punch above their weight, so to speak.
Okay, yeah. So the town investment plan's designed to help support growth and improvement and improve the town through connectivity, urban generation and skills. How do you think what we've seen today would help that happen for Boston?
For me, I'm sure everyone else would agree, it's you know, it's obvious, but it all begins with education. So I think the original town investment plan, you know, as exciting as it was, I think it needed something like the Mayflower building to make it a, you know, more rounded proposition. Because I don't think, you know, urban generation alone isn't the answer. You know, without an improvement in local skills, it's not sustainable. You know, we could have, you know, we could build an amazing shopping centre, but no companies are going to come and fill those spaces, because what we need to do, you know, we need to make it a self-supporting thing, you know, beginning with the education, the employment, and then the further investment comes. So I think, you know, a facility such as the Mayflower building could be, you know, the absolute cornerstone of this project.
And in my introduction to you, I described you as from a back bedroom startup. So the Mayflower building has got some space for business startups. As a successful entrepreneur yourself, how do you think this would help others to start their own business as you've done?
Yeah, I think you know, entrepreneurship is one of those things that can't be taught. I think you've either got that desire to go through, or you haven't. So I don't think these sort of people don't need the initial help in starting the business. I think what the Mayflower can do, it can sort of help nurture, you know, and encourage Boston's entrepreneurs and help them think bigger, you know, perhaps bigger than what their local town would have them first, you know, believe is, you know, what's possible. You know, I don't mean just the resources and education. I mean that if you've got a facility like this, you know, you put talented and like-minded people together, good things tend to happen. It's a perfect environment for that. You know, I mean, what better place could there be to start your business than somewhere like this? You know, I wish it had been around when I started. It's you know, it'd be very exciting. But you know, we've got many homegrown companies that have started from nothing in Boston. And that, like, you know, like George, you know, started from Boston. You've now got national and potentially international success there. People are employing hundreds of people, generating millions for revenue for the town. You know, and at the risk of sounding cheesy, I'd love to see this celebrated in the Mayflower building. So, you know, it can inspire people to build bigger, build better, you know, better businesses in the future. Because it can absolutely be achieved in Boston. It's been proven many times, and you know, people need to believe it.
Yeah, I mean, that iconic building that, you know, word association game, you say Gateshead, you think of Sage, Gateshead, and those buildings that have really been imprinted on our minds as we've gone around the country. So digital technology is really important for your business.
Yeah.
And that's going to be a skill that's in greater demand. How do you see this project could make a difference to you in that respect?
Yeah, I think so. As I've already touched on, I think the location of business shouldn't be the barrier that it once was, but of course that does absolutely rely heavily on digital skills. So you know, they're absolutely essential for the future of the town. But I think it's important to remember that we shouldn't be pushing companies to use technology for the sakes of using technology. I think what we should be doing is sort of showcasing technological success and teaching businesses about what can be achieved with it. You know, that's where I think this project can make a huge difference. Because, you know, I think technology is a means to an end. You know, an entrepreneur's focus should be on delivery of their service and product, not struggling to fill the skills gap. And I think if this project can increase the quantity and quality of technical skilled individuals, then that's a huge boon for Boston businesses, you know, and obviously the town itself.
Thank you very much for that, Jay. I know that was the drinks trolley going past you there in the background.
At least the thunderstorm stopped.
Is there anything else you'd like to comment on from the previous presenters that have gone before you this afternoon?
Yeah, I think just echo what they've said really, about how important it is that we get something like this for Boston and get the investment, because we've absolutely got to do something, to put the town back on the map. As Claire said earlier on about the fantastic history we've got, it does tend to get forgotten. So I think that if Bostonians want to see some positive headlines about the town, then everyone absolutely get behind it. I'll certainly do whatever I can to help. I really hope others feel the same way and show their support.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, James. And we're all very jealous of where you're sat.
No problem.
It's now 3 o'clock. We can extend this session longer to include some Q&A. And it's time to begin the questionnaire session. So can I ask all the presenters to be on camera, please? And a reminder to the delegates, you can still submit questions through the chat box or ask them directly to our presenters by clicking the raise your hand button. I have a few questions, and there's one that's already in the chat that I can ask, and presenters, whoever speaks first goes first. So the question is from Lee. I understand that Boston was built on the wool trade, as it were. Is there any aspects of the bid that includes or looks to include textiles in the town or in the college?
Michelle, did you want to go first, and then I'll follow up with the college aspect?
Okay, thank you, Claire. We are looking at building on Boston's history, and I come back to the port in terms of where the fortunes of Boston have mirrored. If Boston Port is doing well, then actually the fortunes of Boston as a town and place do very well. And one of the things that Boston is part of in terms of its locality is very much the food valley. And those of you that have kept abreast of what's happening with the LEP will have seen that there's a great deal of interest around the food valley. And also recently, Lincolnshire was designated as one of the high performing opportunities area by the Department of International Trade, which takes us all the way back to food, agriculture, manufacturing. And that is one of our real strengths as something that we have. And I put earlier in the chat as an example that just in southeast Lincolnshire alone, 40,000 jobs are connected or rely upon the logistics industry. The logistics industry is currently under threat to relocate to the southeast, particularly in the Kent locality. And we unfortunately have seen some businesses start to buckle to that pressure and move. Now, one of the key challenges is skills. It is around infrastructure, and James mentioned transport and roads earlier on. And that's something that we're also working in partnership now with South Holland Council and County Council in terms of a bid into the Midlands Connect in order to try and obtain some funding for feasibility to enhance the network, particularly around Boston and Spalding, to enhance that opportunity for expansion from the port. And so rather than possibly the textile side of our history, it is more the actual infrastructure of the port and the importing. And as an example, here's a random stat for you. Of all of the food, the fresh produce, I should say, that's imported into the UK from all of the UK ports, 65% of that winds up in Spalding. So why not have that come through the Port of Boston and think what that will do in terms of growth, opportunity and economic development around that. And we have Angie Stewart as one of our attendees this afternoon from the Fresh Produce Network. And we have been, Angie's another key partner whom we have all been, Claire, particularly Angie and Val Braybrook from the university, have really been working hard to start to bring that port expansion and importing opportunity there. And that's where the college comes into play as well in terms of being able to provide the skills that that industry needs. Again, not just to survive and remain, but also to expand and grow.
Thanks, Michelle. And I think you've hit the nail on the head there. It is all about trade, and with an expanded port and the infrastructure that sits behind that, then it doesn't even have to be limited to the trades that have been described, including the wool trades. You know, we're opening up that opportunity for a quick connection through to Rotterdam, for example, will enable not just imports to take place, but also exports of the amazing goods that not only Lincolnshire produces, but also the rest of the East Midlands. So, you know, I'm so excited to be part of Boston at this time when, you know, some of those trade routes we can open up, and rather than having everything coming through the south, we can make the most of our direct entry into the middle of the country. So, you know, wool trade, whatever trade, I think we can actually pull this off if we work together and encourage people to think of Boston as a place to do business.
Thank you, Claire. Claire, a couple of questions. There's some real interest, obviously, in the building. Will childcare or creche facilities be incorporated in the building as part one? And as part two, how do you see the pool working as part of the scheme?
Thank you for both questions. At this stage, the concept is only at concept stage, and we've got a long way to go before we're ready to put in planning permission. So I think these thoughts and ideas of people are going to be critical in order for us to shape a building that absolutely works. I've been involved in lots of build projects over the years, and it can be sometimes the daftest thing that gets missed. So thank you for the suggestion there about childcare, because if we're going to bring people in to retrain, then, you know, some of those barriers can be, how do I access decent childcare? So we have got a nursery that's not far away on our campus, but it's definitely something for us to think about. Thank you. And as far as the other question around ports, as has already been mentioned, we do have a digital transport and logistics academy that is about to be completed, or certainly so in the next few months. And working with Andy Lawrence at the Port of Boston, the opportunities there to support the port in terms of the training needs that the port has, we're already exploring. So you know, having this amazing connectivity that I've seen since I've been here, with people willing to talk and offer ideas, you know, it's so refreshing. I've not seen this. As I mentioned earlier, it's maybe shameful to have been in education for 25 years, but to be in a town where people are open, they want to share their ideas and want to work with us at the college, it honestly is fantastic. So yeah, we're already engaged with the port and with people like Angie Stewart, who can see those connectivities being made.
Thank you very much. The next question, as skills was a key driver in the town deal, what are the shorter timeline initiatives to help boost the transformation of Boston?
Perhaps if I come in first and then Claire again, Simon.
Yeah, fine.
Boston was fortunate to have been allocated £750,000 of what was called accelerated funding, which was designed, and we submitted in July, and the authorisation came through in September. And one of our projects there was to support the college in terms of the new Digital Transport and Logistics Academy that Claire has mentioned. And in fact, that is the funding will be used to help equip the new centre with the right equipment in order to be able to bring that on board quicker and sooner. And the reason that we've done that is because, again, part of the COVID pandemic has seen a number of sectors be really hit hard by the impact of COVID. And we know that whilst we talk a lot about our young people and our young people's aspirations and skills and attainment, but we also know we're going to see a lot more adult learners that are going to find themselves in a position where they need to retrain. And therefore having utilising some of the a good chunk of the accelerated funding on the purchase of the equipment, which the college aren't just buying on their own as such, they are communicating with the businesses who they will be working with to upskill their workforce, and also the students that come through the college. We see that as a great short-term initiative to really kickstart that skills, well, to continue the skills agenda, but really boost the opening of the logistics centre.
Thank you, Michelle. And it's those ways of thinking that I think are making this possible. The speed at which people are working, particularly when most of us are also trying to keep our own show on the road during the pandemic, I think is testament to the commitment to doing something different. And certainly the acceleration fund for the DTLA has made the impossible possible for us, because there's always a limit to the funding that we can achieve as a college. So that's been really, really important. And I think going forward, It's now about turning the wheel, the momentous wheel, to take us in the right direction. We talk about vicious and vicarious circles, and I think possibly Boston has been in a period of a vicious circle now. I think with the people in this room and the people outside of this room who've got that same passion for Boston, we can make that wheel turn even quicker. So I'm really excited about the possibilities, and even after this call and even after this project, if there are people who'd like to get in touch with ways in which we can, you know, help you to move your businesses forward as a college training provider, skills provider. I've already got a couple of businesses who've reached out, and we're doing some fantastic work. And I do believe that it's about action. And if we can prove that this collaboration and this thinking together actually makes a difference, that people can get jobs and be better in the jobs that they have, then that's surely got to be a good thing. So I know people were going to start to leave the call for time purposes, but you know, if people want to get in touch, myself or my colleagues at the college, if you think we can help, then let us know and we'll be on your doorstep.
Brilliant, thank you, Claire. So this is a final call from me for any questions from the audience. As Claire says, time has ticked. It's gone past 3 now.
Simon,
Raise your hand.
if I may,
Yes.
I think there's a question around arts that has come in around asking on behalf of the new Theatre Royal as the Business Development Manager in relation to arts and culture. Yes, that does actually form a really key part of our strategy in terms of the town fund. And when we talk about pride of place, we include that cultural aspect as well. So we have an ask in our town deal around the visitor economy, and we're working with not just Boston and Mablethorpe and Skegness, but also City of Lincoln's town deal as well, to really encapsulate what the visitor economy is in terms of that offer for arts and culture. And in addition, we'll be publishing our final town investment plan on Friday, but there is a draft already available on the Boston Town Deal website. But actually you'll see in there the Shodfries project. Now the Shodfries project is really innovative. It's looking at creating and expanding the offer that we have in terms of theatre within Boston. We're very fortunate we have Blackfriars in Boston, but actually it is a very small venue, and that means that some of the opportunities in terms of artists and exhibitions and visiting performers is limited because of capacity. So that wider Shodfries project is designed to increase the capacity and work with several other funding strands to deliver that over a period of years, but also take back parts of that building to both the fabulous Victorian Hall at the back, which I've been lucky enough to go in and see, and even in its derelict state, it is awesome. But also the original timber beams that are upstairs in the traditional Tudor part, and really be able to utilise and bring those back and be able to get the history of the building and open it up again for other business use and community uses, to keep that on enterprise and entrepreneurial theme around economic activity. So I hope that's helpful for the person who asked that question. Thank you, Simon.
No, thank you. I missed that one completely in the chat. My fault. So thank you, everyone. There's some really good thank you comments on the chat. So I think everyone's been really impressed by the presentations given today. And that brings us to the end of the session. But if you do wish to continue to comment or discuss or have any further ideas, then please email teamlincolnshire@lincolnshire.gov.uk. I'd now like to thank our presenters, Michelle, Claire, George, Kate and James, for sharing their insights with us, and thank you all for attending today's webinar. We're keen to hear your thoughts on the session, and we'll send a survey on the presentation via email shortly. We'd appreciate if you take the time to complete that and provide your feedback, including any suggestions you have for future topics that you'd like to see delivered. Please keep an eye on both the Business Lincolnshire and Team Lincolnshire websites for the latest business updates. If you've not already done so, subscribe to the weekly newsletter at businesslincolnshire.com. And remember, if you're interested in joining Team Lincolnshire, please visit the website or contact Team Lincolnshire at lincolnshire.gov.uk. Look out for further information on the next joint webinar via social media and the Team Lincolnshire and Business Lincolnshire websites. On behalf of Team Lincolnshire, Business Lincolnshire, and our presenters, Michelle, Claire, George, Kate and James, thank you for joining us and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you all.